Negotiators hope to seal some agreement on the president's economic stimulus package after making good progress in the first round of closed-door talks between the two chambers. But South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford objects to the plan and says the president is walking a risky economic tightrope. He joins us this morning from Columbia, South Carolina. Governor, good to have you back on the program. Good morning to you.
My pleasure.
You wrote an op-ed in the Journal back in December where you said, hard to believe not everyone in politics wants a free lunch. And you resisted some of this spending even as it trickled down to the states. Have you changed your view at all?
No. You know, what I said then I think applies today, which is the course that we're on is one that will ultimately harm the South Carolina economy and harm the national economy. And I think we've got to look much longer term and much more holistically when we think about this notion of economic stimulus than simply borrowing money to solve a problem that was created by too much debt, borrowing money to write checks for cash that we don't have in Washington, D.C. I think you've got to look at this larger theme of what are we going to do on card check, what are we going to do on trade policy, what are we going to do on regulatory policy, what are we going to do on tax policy. Look at a much broader band when we think about economic stimulus.
Right. I think no one's saying those things don't deserve attention, but when the president says that people who argue that we don't need to do anything at all are misguided, that seems to be a shot right across the bow of yourself, Senator Shelby, and a lot of others. Are you feeling any urgency at all to go anywhere in terms of fiscal stimulus?
What do you mean, go anywhere? Look where we've gone. I mean, in other words, the numbers last year were about
you don't agree with it. I'm wondering if your own view has changed.
I mean, in other words, I think it's like the boy that cried wolf. I mean, after you put $8 trillion worth of stimulus into the system, and now you're saying, just give me another $800 billion or so, and this will do it, at some point you become not believable, particularly in light of the fact that we're looking at a $67 trillion global economy, and this is now a global problem. So I think that the old saying of when it's bad, it's never as bad as you think it is. When it's good, it's never as good as you think you are. I think we need to slow down because effectively what all these different reactions are doing out of Washington is in fact freezing up private capital. And the biggest driver of our economy ultimately is in fact the private sector and private capital. But if business people don't know what the rules are, if they're going to change each week and each day, and there's going to be Gettner 2.0 and then Gettner 3.0 and Gettner 4.0, if there are just a myriad of different changing plans, you freeze up the real driver of our economy, which is private capital.
So you are saying private capital is frozen because the government is active in fiscal stimulus. Is that your argument?
I'm saying yes, it's become a catch-22, not because of. In other words, you had to give some things a try at the moment that the credit markets were freezing. Some were good, some were bad, but now it's gotten to the point of the absurd. That's what I'm saying. If you look at the so-called stimulus package, much of it is a spending bill rather than a stimulus package.
What's the difference? What's the difference between stimulus and spending?
Large amounts of money going to, well, for instance, the money that's going to go into consular and ambassadorial services on the opposite side of the globe, I don't think will have a whole lot of stimulative impact here in our country. The money that's going to go targeted to Filipino veterans, again, though they served this country incredibly well during World War II, I don't think will have a lot of stimulative impact. The money that's going to go to the digital changeover with regard to television sets, I don't think will have a lot of stimulative impact.
I'm sure you know more than anyone, Governor, the percentage of the total package that apply to the programs you just mentioned is it's microscopic is what it is.
Well, I mean, do we want to spend the rest of the program going down other programs that probably don't make a lot of sense as well? My only point is it's a very inefficient way of getting at that which they're after. If you simply want to stimulate the economy, it is my view, and I think the view of others, then just go ahead and do something that goes straight into the financial bloodstream of this country, like cutting the payroll tax for every working American. It's the tax that's paid by working folks. It is not directed by Washington. What I said on a show the other day is we're moving toward a savior-based economy. And we've given the Fed and the Treasury immense and never before found powers, unprecedented powers. And in that process of picking winners and losers in the marketplace, we probably do more harm to the marketplace and to the formation, the spending of private capital than if you do something that's across the board, transparent, and equal to all. I think it's very dangerous to go down the road of picking winners and losers. Because when I talk to people in South Carolina, I say, how many of y'all gotten bailout money? How many of y'all are going to get the golden tap from Washington, D.C.? Hands don't go up. And so there is an issue of, wait a minute, why them, why not us? Who's paying for this? I just think it raises more questions than not.
The fourth quarter GDP components that were down, CapEx, housing, exports, consumption, government was almost the sole positive. And I'm wondering if in fact the government weren't spending money the way it is right now, what would the economy look like in your world? How much pain are you willing to tolerate in the short term?
I think that what you got to look at, again, what I was getting at earlier, is the foundational setting to economic growth. And borrowing lots of money, and we're at the point of $52 trillion in accumulated liability. You've got David Walker, the past Comptroller General of the United States of America, traveling the country talking about future debt and deficit and other things. If we keep going down the road that we're on, I think that the pain will, in fact, be increased by this level of government activity. Because if you look at what happened in Argentina in the 1920s, for instance, with a currency plunge, if you look at what happened in the Weimar Republic between World War I and World War II, when you needed a wheelbarrow of currency to buy so much as a loaf of bread, historically, if you go far enough out there on unsustainable spending and doing exactly what we're right now, there is a consequence. These are not free checks coming out of Washington, D.C. for the both good and bad of the stimulus package that we were just alluding to. There is a cost, and it will be borne by someone. Question is near term or longer term, but the cost will be borne.
You're right. Someone's going to have to explain all of this to your grandchildren, my grandchildren. So the voices like yours that are calling for discipline are important voices.
And that's if we're lucky. That's if we're lucky.
I understand.
It may be much sooner, and that's the reason I'm making the stand that I am.
Always good to hear from you. It's an important perspective, Governor. Appreciate that.